Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Naruto Prologue - Land of Waves Arc, Episode 1, Enter Naruto Uzumaki. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of what happens within this episode. So the episode begins with a bit of a prologue of the past, how there was this giant nine-tailed fox, their tails could sweep mountains, and that the fourth Hokage, atop a toad, sealed this monster inside of a baby. We then see the baby crying before we get our title screen, and then we see Naruto running through the streets with a bucket of paint, laughing as he outruns the supposedly trained adult ninjas as a student, after having vandalized the National Monument, which is basically the mountain of Hokage's faces. And the supposedly trained adult shinobi ninjas, they run right by him while he's hiding behind a fence. Unfortunately, he then, as he's gloating to himself, runs into his teacher, who ties him up and takes him back to class, and basically scolds him as he's not the most talented of students, and then makes him the enemy of the class by making the entire classroom practice the transformation jutsu. Jutsu being the shinobi ninja techniques. And, well, we first see Sakura going up, and she does it perfectly. Then we see Sasuke going up, does it perfectly. Naruto goes up. He does transform, so technically he did it perfectly, but instead of transforming into his teacher like everybody else, he transforms into a beautiful girl that ends up causing his teacher to pass out from blood loss because his nose bled so heavily from looking at this transformation. And Naruto then, once again, obviously once the teacher gets up, is scolded. And then we have the end of school day afterwards, where Naruto is made to clean up the vandalism on the faces. And while he's cleaning, he basically says that it doesn't matter if he has to stay late to clean them because no one's waiting for him at home because he's an orphan. This makes Iruka sensei, his teacher, feel a little bad, and therefore he decides that he's going to buy him ramen. And while they're eating ramen, Naruto wants to wear his headband as that's the sign of a fully fledged ninja, but Iruka refuses. We then move on to the graduation tests where they have to make a clone, and Naruto makes a pale, can't even stand up, clone-like thing. And basically Mizuki-sensei, another teacher there, tries to convince Iruka that he did make something, so maybe we can pass him since he failed the other 2 exams he's taken. But Iruka puts his foot down because everybody else made 3 passable clones or more, and Naruto couldn't even manage 1 passable clone. So Naruto then ends up sitting sadly on a swing outside of the school while the families congratulate all of the other students who managed to graduate except him. And this is when Mizuki approaches him. Mizuki then, while they're on the roof of a building, tells Naruto that there's a secret way that he'll be able to graduate. We then have Mizuki running into where the Hokage, who is the leader of the village, Hiruzen Sarutobi, is talking to Iruka. and basically says that Naruto has stolen the scroll of sealing, which is a big deal. Everybody starts to sort of mobilize, and Iruka, of course, in a panic, goes to run to try to find Naruto. Iruka finds Naruto, who's been in the woods at like a little cabin, working on learning the Shadow Clone Jutsu all this time, believing that it will let him graduate. And when Iruka arrives, that's what he says, that I heard from Mizuki that if I learned one of these jutsu, I get to graduate. And that's when Iruka puts the pieces together and realizes the actual villain isn't Naruto, it's Mizuki. And of course, then Mizuki reveals himself up in a tree and basically tells Naruto that he is the nine-tailed fox, and that is why everybody hates him, and he's been misled and tricked his entire life, lied to, because nobody was willing to tell him why they hated him. They just treated him like they hated him because they hated him. And this then leads to a little bit of a freak out on Naruto's part, and Iruka basically trying to get Mizuki to shut up, but he won't. And then Naruto runs away while Iruka tries to hold Mizuki off. Iruka turns into Naruto while Mizuki turns into Iruka. And so obviously his trick to try to get Naruto to give him the scroll fails because it's not Naruto, it's Iruka. But Naruto overhears their conversation and he hears Iruka defend him. And that is when he realizes that Iruka doesn't hate him like everybody else and actually sees him as his own person. And Mizuki is the bad guy, so he then reveals himself and uses the Shadow Clone Jutsu to make a lot of clones. And then he beats up Mizuki before then going to check on Iruka, and Iruka tells him to close his eyes, and then he takes the headband from his head and gives it to Naruto, essentially graduating him as only official full-fledged shinobi are able to have the headband, and this leads to happiness. And then the Hokage goes out to where all of the various shinobi are gearing up to go hunting and says, it's taken care of, Iruka's found him, they'll be back soon, you can all go home. And that is what happens in this premiere episode. So now that we're reminded about what happened in the episode, it's now time to rank this episode, and on this channel we rank on two lists. We rank on a mostly objective ranking list, which doesn't use emotion, but bias and judgment can still apply, and we use set values to determine the score, and those values pertain to key storytelling elements. Then we have the personal ranking list, which is where we have the emotional response to the episode, the entertainment value of the episode, and just generally my opinion on the episode, determining the score. Which brings us now to our mostly objective rank values. And I highlighted those I felt applied to this episode. So first off, we have our multi-arc supporting character introductions. So we get introduced, of course, to Minato Namikaze, Kurama, and Gamabunta in our prologue little opening sequence. Then Hiruzen Sarutobi, who is the Hokage, as well as Mizuki and Iruka Umino, who are, of course, the teachers. We then also meet Naruto's classmates, Shino Aburame, Choji Akamichi, Kiba Inazuka, Ino Yamanaka, Hinata Hyuga, Shikamaru Nara, and all of them, because they are all multi-arc supporting characters, are worth 3 points each. Then we have our multi-arc main character introductions worth 4 points each, and this of course is Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, and Sakura Haruno. Worth 3 points, we also have our premise establishment, which of course, premise of the show, we have Naruto. He is the carrier vessel that the nine-tailed fox was sealed into when he was an infant, and he is going to become a shinobi, and his ultimate goal is to become the Hokage of his village and gain the acceptance of the village and his peers within it. Then we have our world building elements, which is, of course, the introduction of the concepts of shinobi being ninja, of jutsu being the techniques that shinobi use. We, of course, learn about the standard jutsu, like the transformation jutsu and the Naruto's version, the sexy jutsu, and the clone jutsu with the shadow clone jutsu. We see various weapons. We see kunai. We see giant shuriken. Um, we learn about the academy. We learn about the headbands, how it has the symbol of the village, and how it's only shinobi who are allowed to wear it, which is why, even if it's only for a moment, Iruka refuses to let him wear the headband while he's at the ramen shop. So we get a lot of world building in this episode, and that's worth 4 points. And then we do have, obviously, we have a couple negative messaging or behaviors. Obviously, first off, we have vandalism. We have truancy. We then, of course, have an older person taking advantage of a younger person by Mizuki tricking Naruto. So manipulation of of a minor by an adult, which is not cool. Then, of course, Mizuki comes and attacks and tries to kill Naruto, planning to kill him for the scroll, which obviously very negative behavior, attempted murder, never a good thing. Thievery, which of course Naruto stole the scroll, so and that's not good either. Um, so yeah, there was a lot of negative messaging and behavior in here. However, because there were so many character introductions, it still ends up ultimately as a 10 out of 10 episode, as that's the maximum score, and the negatives are not enough to bring it below 10. So objectively, this episode is 10 out of 10. And that then brings us to our arc ranking so far on our mostly objective ranking. And in first place is Enter Naruto Uzumaki. Now, my personal feelings about this episode. I'm not sure it's the best look for the main character to be introduced as a truant vandal, but they do manage to turn that around and have us gain sympathy by seeing that, his classmates make snide remarks about him being responsible for them having to do extra work, and by him being generally disliked by, after the graduation, like there are parents who like talk about him very poorly and worry about what he might do as a ninja, and that he gets manipulated by someone being nice to him just a little bit. And we see, like basically we see that he has a terrible life, so obviously he's an attention seeker. And that makes sense as part of his character, so that's great. I'll admit, back in the day, I never watched Naruto first in anime. It was on right before Death Note, I believe it was, back in the day when I used to watch it on like regular TV. And I never once watched Naruto because I would catch the last couple minutes of it before Death Note came on, and the orange jumpsuit turned me off so completely that I was like, I can't handle watching like this ugly orange jumpsuit. And I didn't really understand what the concept of the show was at the time. And so, based on aesthetic alone, I gave it a pass, and it was only years later when I was feeling nostalgic and started watching older anime that I remembered from childhood that I decided to give it a chance, and it ended up being one that I actually enjoy and have watched several times through as a frequent rewatch because it was ended up being very good. So, lesson, moral, don't judge a character by what they choose to wear, even if it is the ugliest thing you've ever seen in your life. Additionally, another thing that put me off on this first episode and this is more me problem, but that's why it's under this personal ranking and not under the objective ranking. I know that that final scene where Iruka gives Naruto his own headband is meant to be emotionally like fulfilling. You're supposed to feel like it's very important, meaningful, impactful, and all I could think of was this man was bleeding, this man was sweating, this man was fighting. What has that headband been through? And you're putting it on somebody else's head, and that is disgusting. You know, not everybody wants to be put into like an article of clothing or an accessory that is covered in someone else's sweat and bodily fluids. Like, it's just disgusting, in my opinion. And I know it's meant to be meaningful, and it's a cartoon, so they're probably ignoring that part. But as somebody who is very, 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 very serious about cleanliness, I personally could not handle that. It took all the emotional impact out of it for me because I was just like, just imagining somebody giving me a sweat-soaked headband while my eyes are closed and actually letting that touch my body, my forehead, maybe dripping into my eyeballs, like, no. No, 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 no. I could not handle it, and it does put me off. The fashion sense puts me off. But overall, I do find the show entertaining. I love the concept of the shinobi, of the village dedicated to that, the school being dedicated to having shinobi. I do also feel like Naruto learns his shadow clones, his signature technique from this scroll. But I am so sure that there are a great many shinobi who use shadow clones. So, given that they set the premise that all of the jutsu that are in this scroll are supposedly forbidden jutsu, I really have to wonder why then everybody seems to know after a certain like length of time the shadow clone jutsu. And even the other villages have some version of clone jutsus that's stronger than the standard, like the shadow clone jutsu that they are able to utilize. So I didn't go so far as to dock points for a continuity error, but I do find it a little bit odd that that particular jutsu would have been in that forbidden scroll when it's not actually forbidden, as it seems like literally every other shinobi knows it. So there's that. But I think Naruto is a likable character. I did think that the graduation scene where everyone's happy with their parents getting congratulated and he's off to the side alone on a swing just watching all these happy family members and seeing like the parents giving him the stink eye and being glad that he didn't graduate was very emotionally impactful, kind of making up for the loss of it at the end there. I do think that the bright colors are kind of subverting what you would traditionally think of a when you think of a ninja, which I think works because it is for children, obviously. And like I said, I do think Naruto was very likable as a character, though he did not make a good impression fashion-wise or with his um, being a truant vandal when we first met him. I think he more than makes up for it after the fact. He seems like a really sweet kid, and I think that it is completely unfair how people treat him. And honestly, to this day, I have never I'm a bit of a narcissist myself, to be honest. So I have never been able to understand why you would ever want to lead or stay in a village full of people who hate you for nothing that you've done. Like, to me, I would be like, as soon as I'm mildly self-sufficient, I'm gone. But not Naruto, and that is to his credit that he is still willing to want to live with and fight for and be a part of and lead a village that has done absolutely nothing at all to deserve it and has actually been actively negative towards him. Obviously, the fact that he is an orphan is tragic, so you got your tragic backstory, which automatically gives you sympathy for the character and makes some of his more abrasive personality traits like his hyperactivity more tolerable because you understand the origin and where it's coming from, and that they establish that in the first episode is very good because it heads off any of the negative feelings that it might bring up. And honestly, from what I'm saying right now, I realize it sounds like I don't like it, but I do. I'm just not blind to the faults of things that I like. And therefore, I decided to give this episode a 7 out of 10. And that puts it in first place as it's the premiere episode. So we have enter Naruto Uzumaki as our first ranked personal. Ep- I lost my train of thought. On our personal arc ranking so far, it's in first. That now brings us to our final segment of this video, which is our series ranking so far, where we will be ranking each of the arcs against each other. And in first, so far, because it's the first arc, on our mostly objective ranking, the prologue dash Land of Waves arc has 10 out of 190. And then on the personal ranking side, we have 7 out of 190. And with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Naruto Prologue dash Land of Waves arc, Episode 1, Enter Naruto Uzumaki. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.